Let's talk Week 14 sleepers and two-star pitchers up next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Friday, June 23rd. I am Frank Samfeld, joined by Scott White. And let's start with the schedule for next week. Thankfully, 0 teams have 5 games next week. 24 teams have 6 games, and 6 lucky teams have 7 games. The White Sox, Tigers, Mets, Angels, Brewers, and Rangers. As for the Rockies, they do have 6 home games next week in Coors Field, 3 against the Dodgers and 3 against the Tigers. Starter sit these 2 start pitchers, Scott. Sandy Alcantara, we know he's struggled recently. He's at the Red Sox and at the Braves.
Yeah, so tough matchups, recent struggles, as you point out. I do have him out of the top tier of 2-star pitchers, the obvious start him everywhere guys. But he's still in the tier where, in most circumstances, I think you start Sandy Alcantara. If it's a points league, for sure. Because, he's probably going to give you a lot of volume and you don't worry as much about the runs he's giving up, as long as he's not getting totally pummeled. But I think even in categories leagues, I'm going to come down on the side of yes, in the hope that he can pick up a win between the 2 starts and have a decent strikeout total because he'll go deep into games.
Sonny Gray has slowed down recently. He is at the Braves and at the Orioles next week.
Yeah, I mean, his biggest problem is that he's not going very deep into games, which has been a long-standing issue for Sonny Gray, and the matchups could be better. At Baltimore, that's at least an okay place to pitch. I lean yes on Sonny Gray as well.
2-star pitchers to add and stream for next week. All of these names are rostered in 75% or less of CBS leagues. Who you got?
Ranger Suarez. He's been on a nice run lately and most recently came through against the Braves, who have just been totally crushing lefties all year. But Ranger Suarez has been doing some good things, has much better matchups this week at the Cubs against the Nationals. Garrett Whitlock on a tremendous 3-start run where he has gotten a lot more swinging strikes. His matchup was pretty good too, going against the Marlins and at the Blue Jays. Gavin Williams' major league debut was a mixed bag on Wednesday, but now he's in line for 2 starts. I think he showed enough promising signs, and of course he has a great prospect pedigree that I'd go ahead and run Gavin Williams out there, especially since the matchups at the Royals, at the Cubs, pretty favorable. I like Julio Teheran this week too. It's taken a while for me to come around to Teheran for obvious reasons, but he continues to get the job done. His ERA is just a little over 150. I don't think it'll stay there, but he is legitimately doing a good job of limiting hard contact. Expected ERA just a little over 3, and is in line for 2 starts, including 1 at Pittsburgh. These last 2 options are more points league only. Reed Detmer's coming off his best start of the season. Good strikeout rate, but has just been really inefficient overall. Still, going against the White Sox, against the Diamondbacks, I think at least in points leagues you could justify it. And Martin Perez tends to be a good streamer in points leagues just because when he's good, he goes 6-7 innings usually. And one of his 2 matchups is against the Tigers.
4 single start streamers for next week. Brian Bayo up against the Marlins, Braxton Garrett at the Red Sox, Taijuan Walker at the Cubs, and Brian Wu versus the Nationals. Scott, specifically Garrett and Wu, they pitched really well once again on Thursday.
Yes, they did. So Wu, still being so early in his career, you can't necessarily count on him to go deep into the game, but the peripherals have looked great. His ERA is over 5, but his expected ERA coming into Thursday's start, 2.60. And he also entered the start with a 16% swinging strike rate. So I like what I've seen from Wu lately, his 1 matchup against the Nationals. I also want to mention, you said Braxton Garrett is a 1-start streamer this week. He's coming off a 13 strikeout effort and has an even 2 ERA in his last 8 starts. It is a tough matchup, particularly for a lefty facing the Red Sox lineup, but I think Braxton Garrett has earned the chance to start even with that tough matchup.
All right, let's wrap up with the hitters here. The best matchups for next week: the Brewers, Dodgers, Rockies, Tigers, and Rangers. The worst hitter matchups: Giants, Pirates, Angels, Royals, and the Nationals. With that being said, Scott, your favorite sleeper hitters for Week 14?
So my favorite 2 by far are a couple of Rangers, and I think they're among the most under-rostered hitters in fantasy. The Rangers, as you mentioned, have the 5th best hitter matchups. They are Leody Taveras and Ezekiel Duran, who can play 3 different positions, third base, shortstop, and outfield. Tavares is strictly an outfielder, but he's looked much better this year, striking out a lot less. The Tigers have the 4th best matchups, and they're one of the 2 teams visiting Colorado this week. So from their lineup, I like Javier Baez, who has been heating up lately, and Kerry Carpenter, who has done some good things recently as well. I like a couple of Reds outfielders who tend to sit against lefties, but there's only one lefty on the schedule for the Reds this week, and they've played well lately. They are Jake Fraley and TJ Friedel. I also like Tommy Pham, who has played so well lately that he might be the reason prospect Ronnie Mauricio is still stuck at AAA. And if you look at Tommy Pham's StatCast page, it's all lit up in red. I don't think that means he's going to sustain what he's doing. He's tended to be a guy who underperforms the data, but he's hot right now. So Tommy Pham's a good play. The one Rockies hitter I feel like I can recommend who's available enough for this exercise is Ezekiel Tovar, who has been hitting a lot better lately. Of course, the Rockies have the full week of home games.
All right, for more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.